I didn't think that South Africa would end up having a peaceful transition to democracy with black people having a majority vote. And I don't think I anticipated when I was 15 that the Iron Curtain will fall down. At certain stages, there has to be a momentum for reform. I'd be very keen if I were you to ensure that that momentum does occur. But I think people should have some confidence that if they try hard, this is probably a good time to get reform. I'm delighted that our work is not hitting partisan snags as sometimes our work does.
I might just add on. I mean, I think if we end up with a trial in one or more states, I think that's going to reflect the failure of the people sitting here. And I wouldn't want to see it go down that path. I think we've got enough momentum on this issue to actually implement something more meaningful than a trial. I know there's a lot of cynicism at the moment towards politicians generally, much of it deserved. I can say that because I'm not one just yet. You go from being a doctor to being a poly, and it's you go from being someone who's got some degree of respect in the community to being right down the bottom of the pecking order, and you see that all the time. But the truth is, I mean, I think there's a lot of goodwill around the issue, and for the first time, we've got a government and an opposition that seem to be genuinely committed. We've got this report on the table. We've got a mobilised and engaged community. We've got to get it over the line this time, and we've also got, as I said, a few people in the Senate who want to see it happen. So, I think that we're at a very critical juncture, and we just can't afford to let this one slip through. I think that would be a huge failure.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the left.
My name's Chris Dolner, cerebral palsy. I live in regional Queensland. There's a lot of concern out there in regional areas around, you go to the summit of the mountain and you hear the good oil and you hear the good stuff, and then you come back. And we have a selection of politicians here from various parties. We've heard your commitment. We've heard your individual commitments. I guess my question follows on from the gentleman's and from Patricia's comment about, what real assurity do we in regional Queensland and as local people who are going to be supportive of this drive to change, what real assurity do we have that as a whole strategy, as a whole new approach, it will all be implemented? It will not get watered down. It will not become an add-on hoc thing that we've had in the past, because we've all had the add to bits and pieces. We want change, and that's from regional Queensland. Everybody has had enough. And it's great the politicians are here, but are the people, the other politicians standing beside you and behind you, are they there too? Or are you just the forerunners that are going to give us all this rhetoric and then run back and just water it down at the end of the day? That is the real big crunch question out there, and particularly in the area that I live in, a terrible fear that if we step out and we say, yes, we want this, and we drive it as hard as we can, we're going to be disappointed yet again.
Okay. Mitch wants to answer this question, and I'd actually like to make a comment as well.
Sure. Thanks, Bruce. I'll throw myself in front of the Productivity Commission at this point, because whether something happens or not is beyond their control. They can lead us to water, but they can't make us drink. It'd be fair to say. So ultimately, whether something happens, whether we want to see, whether what we want to see happens, is ultimately up to me, Jan, and Richard, and our parties. Are our colleagues standing with us? Well, I can only speak on behalf of my own parliamentary colleagues, but I can tell you Tony Abbott is standing lockstep with me on this issue, and that we are determined. You mentioned regional Queensland. There are particular challenges in providing services in regional Queensland. I know that the Productivity Commission has, in regional areas, the Productivity Commission has focused on some of those issues in their report. But I think one of the benefits of a trial, which was spoken of before, and Mary Wooldridge's offer to have a trial in Victoria was actually picking up one of the Productivity Commission's own recommendations that there be a trial. And the idea of a trial in a geographic area is to learn lessons and iron out kinks so that the rollout through the rest of the nation can happen much more quickly than if you try to do the whole nation at once without a trial, and you're making mistakes along the way which could actually delay the ultimate implementation. And so I think there are benefits for regional areas if we have a trial, and I guess you're suggesting that if there is to be a trial, maybe having one in partly a regional area might be an idea so we can learn lessons there.
Rhonda just wanted to make a comment.
I just wanted to, but my microphone's gone, so I don't know if
Okay, well, I'm going to move on, Rhonda, because I'm just going to take...
I just wanted to pick up Senator McLucas's point that I think the answer to that question is also in our own hands. It isn't up to only the politicians. And if everybody here gets 50 people supporting the NDIS, well, we're starting to really get somewhere, because I think we've got to do it too, you know, so I think we've really got to be activists. That politicians will respond, I mean, to that demand. So I really do think that's a very important part of that answer.
I'm just going to take one more question. Sorry, John wants to go. Oh, sorry.
Just on the point of promises falling away. One of the reasons that the Productivity Commission recommended a national scheme is that we've seen that things fall away without state consistency and state solidarity. So I think one of the risks of this, and one of the biggest risks for falling away, for example, in regional Queensland, is that we don't get a national agreement. By national I mean states, territories and the Commonwealth, to all move in one direction. I think that's critical for the success of this.
Okay, I'm just going to take one last question from the right, and then unfortunately we're run out of time, and I just want to make a few concluding remarks. So just the question, and then we'll do the answer, and I'll make some concluding
Thank you.
remarks.
I'm Mary Walsh. I'm a family carer advocate, and what was going to be a question, I guess, has now been posed by the other lady from regional Queensland. I live in regional Queensland, but I've done a lot of advocacy nationally at regional level, and the tyranny of distance is an issue that does create a tremendous amount of trouble for all of our services, not just the service providers, but also their family carers. And I would be concerned from a regional perspective if the only trial happens in a geographically small area like Victoria. That's no disservice to Victoria, but because you do things well. The issue is that we really do need to pick up some of the problems that occur in those larger geographical areas. And I guess a final comment is that someone raised earlier this morning the matter of $285 a year not being much. And I think the problem there is that it is a lot of money to people out there who neither work nor live in disability. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a comment rather than as a question. Look, I'd just like to wrap up what I think has been a terrific day. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of the role that John Walsh has played in the development of this idea. A number of people have commented today about the role that I've played, but I must say that this scheme and this idea would not be where it is today without John. His knowledge of disability, his knowledge of insurance schemes is absolutely integral to where we are. And so publicly, before this audience, John, I'd just like to thank you for your commitment to this idea, the work that you've put in, and the work that I know you're going to put in over the months that lie ahead. The second thank you goes to the Productivity Commission, which I think has done an outstanding job. While in a sense the name for this scheme has remained unchanged, the detail has evolved tremendously, and it has evolved through the painstaking and very careful analysis that the Productivity Commission has done. And so I'd like to thank Patricia, and if you could pass on my thanks, and I think the thanks of all people with disabilities, to the team that has worked on this. I think you have done a truly outstanding job, and in your own way you've become advocates for this idea, although I know you're not allowed to do that. I'd also like to thank Senator McLucas, Senator Fifield and Senator Di Natale for your contribution to this session. I think it is very significant that we have had the three major parties on the same platform, all saying that this scheme needs to happen. There is cross-party support for this. This is a quite unprecedented situation in which we find ourselves. We now need to turn that support, that goodwill, into the full scheme that's now needed. So to Jan, to Mitch and to Richard, look, thank you very much for being part of the panel today and being part of the proceedings. And we very much look forward to working with you all as we continue our quest to ensure that a proper national disability insurance scheme is introduced as quickly as possible. Finally, I just want to address everybody in this room, because while today is an event, and indeed an historic event, it is part of something bigger. And by that I mean it is part of a campaign. A number of suggestions have been made today regarding what it will take to ensure that a disability insurance scheme is introduced. Bill Shorten opened this conference by saying that the door is ajar. It's ajar. It's not open. We need to make sure that that door opens and that as a result our leaders introduce this scheme. Mary Wooldridge this afternoon made it clear that Victoria wants to take a leading role and has already implemented a number of practical steps to ensure that this state is what you might term NDIS ready. They have also indicated that they wish to coordinate their efforts with the Commonwealth and to cooperate through COAG. But we all know that COAG is a very fraught process, distinguished more by disagreement than by agreement. And so each of us need to go back to our states and talk to our local politicians to make sure that they too support an NDIS at the state level as well as at the Commonwealth level. And it's vital that that support is not just in principle support, but in practice support, genuine support for this reform. In terms of what else needs to be done, we need more people to sign up on the website. Rhonda a moment ago said, if each of us go from this room and ask 50 of our friends and make sure that 50 of our friends sign up, we'll have 50,000 members signed up on our website. If they in turn go and just get another 10 people, we'll have 500,000 people. So getting people to show just an interest, because that's all that signing up on a website is, just sufficient interest, that is a very important part of this campaign. And the final point is that we have had good media coverage, but we need continued media coverage. So go back to your local communities, talk to your local papers, and make sure that this event gets the coverage it deserves. It is, I think, a chance that we have not had for 30 years. People have referred today to the International Year of People with Disabilities in 1981 and the hopes that people had at that time. Let's make sure it's not another case where the hopes were raised but the outcomes were poor. We need to make sure in everything we do over the next few months that we build community support. And the time is short, as we have just 5 months before the federal government issues its response to the final Productivity Commission report. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attendance today. I look forward to seeing you at drinks, and we look forward, of course, to seeing you back here tomorrow for a half day of plenary session and then sessions designed particularly for disability service providers, for carers and for people with disabilities. So thank you very much and good evening.